1950s, a young man by the name of George Wallace decided to make his mark in politics. In 1958, he ran for governor of the state of Alabama. At that time, he was actually considered to be a moderate on racial issues. His opponent, John Patterson, was actually backed by the Ku Klux Klan. By the way, Patterson won that election. The outcome of that election was a crossroads for Wallace. In 1962, he ran for governor again in the state of Alabama, and he ran as a hardline segregationist. Someone asked Wallace why his message became so racist. Wallace responded, "I tried talking about all the stuff we usually talk about, stuff like good roads, good schools. Nobody listened. But then I started talking about," and he used a racial epithet for African Americans, and they stomped the floor. In 1962, Wallace won that election, standing in the pride and glory of a landslide win. Wallace stood on a star that marked the very spot where 102 years earlier Jefferson Davis had been sworn in as the President of the Confederate States of America. History remembers Wallace for these words: "In the name of the greatest people that ever trod this earth, I draw a line in the dust, and I cast a gauntlet at the feet of tyranny. And I say, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever." It wasn't long before Wallace had an opportunity to back up those words, when two African American students applied to go to school at the University of Alabama. Wallace actually stood on the steps of Foster Auditorium at the University of Alabama, refusing to allow Vivian Malone, James Hood to enter the school. It wasn't until being confronted by the Deputy Attorney General, Federal Marshals, and the Alabama National Guard that Wallace stood down. Here's the question: can a guy like that change? What can you do when you failed, not only on a personal scale, but on a much larger national scale? In 1972, Wallace got a wake-up call when an assassin put 4 bullets into his body. One bullet lodged in his spinal column, permanently paralyzing him from the waist down. Sometimes God has a way of getting our attention. In the late 70s, Wallace became a believer. And Wallace said, "Where I once sought power and glory, now I know I need to seek love and forgiveness." He served the state of Alabama as a 4th-term governor from 1983 to 1987. He took some bold steps in Alabama. He actually apologized to civil rights leaders. And during that term as governor, he appointed a record number of African Americans to government positions. Even more unlikely, he developed a friendship with an African American preacher by the name of Reverend Joe Lowry. Someone once asked Joe Lowry, "Do you believe Wallace is sincere?" Lowry said, "Yes, I do." In fact, a nation was stunned when the New York Times printed a photograph of Reverend Joe Lowry holding hands with Governor George Wallace, singing the song, "We Shall Overcome." Wallace would die in 1998. Before his death, he actually requested a meeting with Reverend Joe Lowry. At this time, Governor Wallace was bedridden. He had to communicate by writing on a screen. When Lowry entered the room, Lowry began to communicate. They shared several things, but before Lowry left, Wallace wrote these words on the screen: "I love you. I was wronged in 1965. All of us live with pieces of our past we would like to forget. The memory of when we weren't strong enough, pure enough, smart enough, clever enough, courageous enough, brave enough, spiritual enough, whatever enough. Sometimes the pain of that regret, shame, guilt can be overwhelming, almost paralyzing. What do you do to break free? You do the same thing Wallace did. First of all, you admit, I was wrong. The Bible calls it repentance. It's when you indicate to God, I've been trying things according to my agenda. It hasn't worked. Now, God, I trust and surrender to your agenda. The second thing you do is receive grace. The truth is, you can't go back and change your past. You can't relive it. But grace can cover it. Dear Birmingham, dear you, your past doesn't have to define you.